Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2015 Grand Design Reflection fifth wheel, we're going to be showing you how to install the Furrion Tankless Water Heater. But before we do that, why don't we check this out and make sure that it's something that's going to work for you. So with the Furrion Tankless heater in our Grand Design, it actually worked out really well. It is a really good fit. This thing is nice and snug inside of there. And it just worked out. You know, we did have to change a couple of things as far as fittings and stuff go. Not really a huge deal. That's kind of to be expected. We're using on ours today, we're using the door that's 16 by 18. And that's because in our particular one, a lot of Grand Designs may be similar to this, but the opening was a little bit larger. And so using a little bit bigger door, you know, was able to kind of cover that up, and I think it looks really good actually. So just to kind of give you guys an idea of the unit that we replaced, this is the one that came factory in our particular Grand Design. You know, I can't speak for every single one of them, but I just kind of wanted to give you something to work off of. This is an Atwood unit, and you know, so it was a pretty good fit, the new one, in replacing this. One thing I like about the Furrion is I think it looks a little bit better, honestly. You know, I think the door just kind of has a better design and just kind of looks a little more modern and put together. So this is kind of my first time experiencing and kind of playing around with the tankless water heater, and I was really curious to see how well it actually worked, and believe it or not, I was thoroughly impressed. And one of the things immediately that I thought of was my own experience. We have some property and a camper down there, and what immediately came to my mind is whenever I'm taking a shower. So the one that we have down in our camper is a tanked water heater, so it fills up a tank inside with that hot water, and it's always a pain. You know, whenever we go to take a shower, you don't want to run out that hot water because it takes forever to get it back. And so what I do, you know, I rinse off, I turn the water off, soak down, and kind of do one of those deals. And you kind of just feel rushed. And then, you know, if someone else is coming in behind you wanting to use hot water, they have to wait around for a long time. And, you know, there's just a better way to do things. And that's how this tankless water heater is kind of the ticket. This thing gives us hot water on demand. And since you're not having to worry about filling up a tank full of hot water, this is going to deliver hot water the whole entire time. So you're never going to have to feel rushed again, or, you know, try to wait around and let that water heat up. That way you can get that warm water. So before we kind of start, you know, getting carried away and talking about a lot of the features and stuff, a lot of people want to know right off the bat, you know, is this even going to work with your camper or, you know, your recreational vehicle? And I don't blame them. That's exactly what I would want to know too. And you know, all these campers and everything, they're all just set up a little bit different. So, you know, there's really no one answer that I can give you. So really the best way to figure that out is to just go off of our measurements. So these measurements I'm going to give you are just the unit itself, not including the door or this piece around it. So as far as how long it is, so from this corner up, it's going to be 12 5/8 of an inch. As far as the width, so how wide it is, it's going to be 12 13/16 of an inch. And as far as the depth, so from the front here to the very back of the unit, that's going to be 19 3/16 of an inch. So, you know, as long as this can fit inside your existing opening, you're in pretty good shape. You know, a little bit bigger you can usually get away with, you know, if the opening's a little bit bigger. I mean, if it's several inches each way, you know, you might have to do some work in there to keep everything secure. But as long as your opening's that big and you got the room, chances are pretty good you can get this set up. Now that's going to kind of bring me to my next point. You know, this deal sold in a handful of different configurations. So you know, you can get it as a whole kit that comes with your door, and there's 3 different door sizes, so kind of just going to depend on your particular application on which one that you need. And it's also going to come with just the whole kit minus the door. So if you're unsure of what door you want, or would rather kind of get it in and then kind of go from there, that's always an option. You can always grab those doors separately. So when I first picked this thing up and started really checking it out, you know, the first thing that came to my mind is what's kind of the advantage of a tankless type system compared to one that does have the tank. You know, would this be, you know, just like a replacement if your old one broke, or an upgrade? And I think it'd be safe to say it's both. If I had a tankless one go bad, or I'm sorry, one with a tank go bad, I would make the switch to the tankless. Or even if, kind of like how we talked about earlier, I was just kind of sick and tired of running out of that hot water all the time, you could use it as an upgrade. You know, pull that tanked one out and put this one in. And so with this one, you know, you're never going to run out of that hot water. As long as you have water flowing through it, it's going to heat it, and it's going to continue to do that until you turn the water off, turn your hot water off. And then there's some other small advantages too. You know, like it's a little more efficient in terms of, you know, how much gas it's going to use. And as you know, gas isn't cheap, and it's kind of a pain to keep having to refill and stuff. So if you can stretch that out a little bit longer, you know, it's definitely worth it, just really in the time savings of not having to mess with it and everything else. And it's able to be a little more efficient because you're only going to be using that gas whenever you have the hot water on and you're running that hot water, as opposed to that tank, you know, tank style of heater. You got to have, you know, generally speaking, 3, 4, 5, 6 gallons of water in there that it's always going to be trying to keep hot and kind of keep warm, and you're draining it and it's filling up, and it just kind of runs a lot. And that's really not the case at all with this one. So, you know, you can expect to see a little bit of gas savings as well. So something that I do want to mention is actually getting this installed. Now, we'll show you how to do that, or how I did it here a little bit later on, but I thought this was worth mentioning now. And I say that because, you know, a lot of people that own these type of rigs do a lot of things themselves. And I'm not gonna lie, this is the first time I put one of these in, and when I saw this project, I was a little unsure what to think. You know, what is this going to entail? And once I kind of got in here, it really wasn't too bad. You know, as long as this unit fits, everything's pretty much kind of just a plug and play type deal. There's a little bit of things you need to do, and it's like I said earlier, it's just really going to depend on your particular situation. In our case, we had to grab some different fittings and stuff just to kind of make our hoses be able to connect with this, but really not that big of a deal. You know, once you kind of get in here and see how things work, and you know, take your old one out, and you just kind of get a feel for it, and it's really not bad. I feel like you know, anyone that has some basic hand tools and a little bit of time will be able to do something like this on their own. Something that I think is pretty nice, it's kind of just a small detail, but this is going to have an auto pilot light, you know, so it's going to ignite on its own whenever you're using the heater. And you know, it's something small, but it's nice. You know, one less thing you're going to have to worry about doing on your own whenever you get set up and things like that. So you know, it's a lot of work setting everything up, and so one thing to help kind of streamline that is a little bit easier on you. As soon as you know, I started looking at the tankless type heater, one of the things that kind of came to my mind was the winterization process. You know, when you go to store it, or if you're in real cold temperatures. And I say that because, you know, without a tank, things are a little bit different. So I thought, you know, and that's really not the case. Since you still have water lines that run through here and everything, that winterization process is not going to change. You know, you're still going to have to either blow the lines out, or, you know, run antifreeze through them, whatever the manufacturer recommends and whatever you've been doing. That's something that's not going to change. So nothing new there, and you know, you're not going to have to relearn a whole entire process. Something that pretty neat, you know, so this is going to come with the thermostat, and it's relatively small and pretty thin, and that's nice. You can kind of customize where you want to put it and things like that. In our case, we kind of have this access panel here, and not really hardly any room, but we're still able to kind of close our doors and keep it out of sight. And so, you know, it's nice to have some adjustability and how hot you want to make the water, but honestly, this is probably something you're going to kind of find that temperature that everyone likes and probably not mess with it too much. You know, it's not like you're heating or cooling, you know, that you're always changing up and down. So it's nice. This is pretty small. You know, you can kind of put it in a spot where you can get to, but, you know, you're not having to look at it all the time. With that said, you know, it's going to give us some pretty, you know, some adjustability there, and that way we can kind of fine tune our water temperature exactly how we want it. The thermostat is going to give us, you know, kind of just our basic adjustments here. We can go from Celsius to Fahrenheit, and we can set the temperature all the way from 95 degrees all the way up to, I believe, 124 degrees. So that's pretty warm, you know, and usually somewhere in the middle is kind of everyone's liking. So, you know, you can adjust it and whatever makes you happy, you can go with that. So I'm just kind of curious here. I kind of want to run a little test and see how long this actually takes to get our water up to temperature. So this has been sitting all night. I just hooked up to water. Turn the water on just to kind of purge the lines. I'm going to let it set for a while. And we have our temp set at 115, so let's go ahead and get our water running and kind of just see how long it takes. All right, so we'll go ahead and get our hot water rolling. And hopefully this works out like I'm thinking. So I got my temp on, it's saying 71, about 70 degrees. So that's kind of just the ambient temp. And just by going off feel, there we go, it's starting to warm up. Definitely starting to go up there. You can see that temperature climbing. And we'll see if it brings it to a true 115. I feel like if we get it close, you know, that's we'll probably be in pretty good shape. So getting up there now, it's really starting to kind of heat up pretty quick. 115 is pretty hot too. I mean, even at 102 here, put my finger under there, I definitely wouldn't want to take a shower at this temperature. It's definitely pretty warm. So we'll see, it's trying. And that might be about all we're getting here. It might take a little while to really kind of get things heating up, but I mean, I can see steam coming off and the water's hot. Water's definitely hot, so this gun too might have kind of a hard time running water. But just to kind of give you guys an idea, I mean, from room temperature to pretty darn hot doesn't take a whole lot of time. So it's a pretty efficient water heater. So pretty impressive actually, you know, infrared temperature gun aside and exact temperatures, it got hot fast. You know, it kind of reminded me about what you could expect out of your house. You know, you cut that hot water on, after a few seconds it gets all the way up to temp and you're good to go. So, you know, just because it's a tankless heater, don't have that hot water stored, you don't have to wait around all day for things to kind of start getting heated up and get your hot water going. So compared to some of the other water heaters that are available, I think we kind of, you know, went over the benefits of a tankless one compared to a tank style one. But, you know, this one compared to other tankless ones, I mean, I'll be honest, they're all going to work pretty much about the same and have the same features for the most part, and you know, really perform very similar. This one, compared to another one, this one does have 60,000 BTUs, so it's a little bit higher range than some. But that said, you know, all the ratings are close, and at the end of the day, they're going to give you hot water. I think really what it's going to boil down to is which one is actually going to fit in your particular camper or whatever you're trying to put it in, you know. Some of the other ones available are a little bit different size, and so I think that's going to be a huge determining factor, you know, which one will actually work. But other than that, you know, at the end of the day, I'm really impressed with these actually. I think it's a great upgrade, or like I said before, you know, if your tank style one goes bad, definitely something to consider. If you're going to go through the trouble to replace one, why not kind of go a step up and upgrade and get a little bit better benefits out of it. But other than that, you know, as far as getting this thing installed, I know we kind of touched base on that earlier. Really not too bad. I will kind of forewarn you, expect to have to pick up some things here and there just to kind of make it work. But as you know, as long as you got a little bit of time to spend and stay focused, shouldn't really give you too many issues. So why don't we go ahead and get right into it. To begin our installation, there's a few things that we need to do before we even worry about taking the old unit out. And with that said, keep in mind, every camper is going to be set up a little bit different. You know, they're all just a little different from the next. So, you know, this will at least get you going in the right direction and get you going to where you need to go. In our case today, we have a Grand Design reflection. So just to kind of give you an idea. But the first thing that you're going to want to do is make sure everything's off. You know, make sure your gas is off, your power's off, your water, and all those types of things. That way we're not, you know, having to deal with it and have an accident when we're getting ready to pull this out. And then from there, what I like to do is just double check our measurements, you know, that way we can make sure it's actually going to fit. If you're adding this unit, not really a huge deal, you know, because you can cut it to size, but you know, chances are good the majority of you are going to be upgrading and replacing. So, you know, just measure the width and, you know, the height of it and compare it to the new unit. Like I said, everyone's going to be a little bit different. Generally speaking, as long as you're close, as long as the hole's not huge, you can get away with it. But you can't find those exact sizes and things like that in your instructions, and always have a good reference to go off of. So before we worry about pulling this out, I figured we can get everything unhooked that we actually can. That way it's a little easier to work with. Since our gas line comes through the front here and plugs in or threads on, I'm going to get that removed. Looks like we're going to have a bunch of sealer here. It actually came off really easy, a lot easier than I thought. We'll get that out of the way. Get that off, just grab a couple of wrenches here. I'll go ahead and break that free. So just kind of a heads up, you know, it is normal to hear a little bit of gas come out of your line. Just kind of what was left over in the lines actually coming back to here. And just kind of taking a look at everything. All the wiring seems to be kind of internal as a whole unit. And what I'm going to do now, before we pull this out, is I'm going to see if I can just take our door off. Kind of one less thing to have to mess with. And one thing you want to do is go inside of your camper, and a lot of times you can kind of go to where this is mounted and get to it from the back. And if you can disconnect any of your water lines and stuff back there, I would probably go that route. Like I said, every camper's a little bit different. In our case, I look back there and it would be really hard to reach back there and do that. So it looked like the lines had some flexibility, so we should be able to pull this thing out and get to them. But with that said, I'm going to go ahead and just take our screw gun here and start removing all the fasteners. So once you have the screws out, you know, you're probably going to have some sealer that run around here, so you can take some type of scraper or something, clean that up, kind of get everything broke loose, and just kind of start to carefully pull this out. If you feel a ton of tension, we don't want to get too carried away here, but it seems like it's actually coming out pretty good. Your gas line might be kind of in the way. If you can't get this to come out any further, we may need to figure out something else here. So just kind of try to get this finessed and see what happens. So I was able just to kind of keep working this and finesse this thing out. And what we're going to do is disconnect the wiring here. In our case, these are all color for color. If yours happens to have some different colors on it, it might not be bad just to kind of write it down, what goes where, you know. You may need it, you may not, but never bad to have. We'll get this out of the way. And then we have our two water lines, one up here, and then the other one's a little harder to see. It's just right below it. But we're going to disconnect those. I seen it said hot right here, so I keep things in order. I just put some red marker there just to kind of have something to reference if we need to. And we're just going to simply disconnect these water lines. So trying to take this fitting off, it was really tight, and with it being plastic, I just decided to take a deeper look at it. And I realized, looking at the back of our new heater, that this threaded fitting isn't going to work with it anyway. So instead of even messing around with this, since we're going to have to redo this portion, what I'm going to do is just cut the hose clean. That way, like I said, we don't have to mess around a whole lot with it. So I'm going to take a pair of cutters here, cut that as close as I can. You'll probably get a little bit of water, that's normal. The one on the bottom I already cut, so we don't have to worry about that. Now we can pull our unit out. So from here, you know, you want to make sure everything's clean and dry, wipe everything down. And around the edge here, if you had any of that sealer or anything like that, you want to make sure to scrape that off and make sure it's nice and clean as well. That way we have a good surface to work with when we put our new one in. So now we're just going to kind of prep our heater a little bit, and on the flange, on all four sides, you just want to take some butyl tape and stick that to it. We're not going to pull the backing paper off just yet. We just want to kind of have this in place and ready. So this butyl tape doesn't come with it, but you can grab some here at etrailer, and I'm using 1 inch wide butyl tape. On the back of our unit here, we're going to go ahead and put our fittings on. Like I said before, we did have to change these, so the fitting that I'm using in our case, it's going to thread onto here. This part's going to be barbed, and then our original water line's going to slide over that, and we're going to crimp it down. So I figured it'd probably be easier to have this threaded on. That way we can just slide the water line on and crimp it instead of trying to turn it and making a big ordeal out of it. This fitting that I'm using is going to be a 1/2 inch ID by a 1/2 inch FIP. So these are the ones we're rolling with here. To put these on, I'm going to put some pipe dope on the threads here. That way you can try to, you know, eliminate any leaks and keep everything sealed up. A good coating on it. So this one that I'm doing here is for our hot water, where the hot water is going to come out into our sink and then our shower and everything else. Make sure that's clean. And we're just going to thread these on and tighten them down. I'm going to do that same exact thing for our fitting down here, which is labeled water inlet. So this is where our water's going to come in to the heater and get warmed up. So now I went ahead and identified our factory wires here, what they're going to do, because we do need a power and a ground to hook up to our new heater. This is 12 volt power, so I just tested them, put power to them, tested them. Turns out in our case, the white wire here was the power wire, the green was the ground. The other wires that are in this bundle we're no longer going to need, so I just kind of taped them up out of the way. To make things as easy as possible, I did pre-attach some butt connectors there to the ends. You're going to have to pick these up separately, but that way we just have everything we can ready when we go to put our heater in. With that said, I also ran 2 pieces of wire for our thermostat. So again, all this stuff you're gonna have to get separate. The ends here I just put on butt connectors, and this is probably 6 or 7 foot of wire. It's really just gonna depend on where you wanna mount yours. I found a spot inside, so that's all the wire I needed. But I push that back up inside where I'm trying to go. That way that's in place, and when we put our water heater in, we can hook up everything and be done back here. So we're at the point now where we can start to get stuff hooked up and get the water heater in. So I hooked up our wires here like we talked about. The white wire coming out of our water heater, that's ground, so that's going to go to our green one. The black wire coming out of the water heater is going to be the power wire, and since the white wire on our factory camper wiring is ground, we hooked it up there. The 2 blue wires are going to be for our thermostat, and I just hooked them up to the 2 extra black wires that we ran. With that said, these ones, the polarity don't matter, so you don't have to really kind of keep track of which one's going to go where to the thermostat or anything like that, as long as we have them both hooked up. For our water lines now, I'll just show you this hot one, because after this I'm going to have to kind of put this in here. It's going to be really tight. So the way you're going to do this here, you know, thankfully we marked this hot one, so we know that goes to our hot fitting there. So that's just going to slide on over. And we're going to take a hose clamp and just clamp it down. So pretty straightforward stuff here. So I'll go ahead and hook up our other water line as well as the gas line down here in this corner, and hopefully we can get a good look at it once I have that done. So I was able to get the gas line hooked up and the other water line really tight. In our case, I had to climb way back you know, underneath the storage compartment here in our camper and get to everything, but it can be done once you're in there. You know, just make sure you have all the wrenches and tools that you're going to need, and that way you only have to do it once and don't have to climb in and out. But with that said, you know, I push this almost all the way to our camper here, remove that backing off of our butyl tape, and now we're just going to go ahead, kind of get it centered where we want it, and push it flush. So if you have any gaps or anything after you get this in there, you want to make sure it's nice and tight. And if you have gaps, get that butyl tape and just kind of cover everything. Make sure it's sealed up. And then when that's done, you can take the door here and get that lined up. And then we're going to take all of our existing screws and get it secured. When I'm doing this, I'm going to just try to kind of do an X pattern from the inside out. Hopefully that'll kind of draw everything in nice and even. So with these here, since we have this gap on each side, these aren't going to go to anything. So what I think I might do is just add an additional screw. That way we can get one more on the side. If not, I mean, this thing is in place. I don't think it is going anywhere, but I'm going to grab the front of our door and make sure this additional screws won't impede with this. So I was able to add a couple more. This thing is in there, very secure. It's not going anywhere. So I put this tray on, and now we can take the front door, leave that in place, lock it down. So now inside of our camper, we have our thermostat wired up. So here's our black wires that we ran, and the little kitchen area deal we got going on here. Underneath in the cabinet, is where the furnace and everything was that we could actually kind of get to. And that there's a panel here that was just blocking that, so I figured why not put the thermostat here. It's going to be really close with the doors. I figured worst case scenario, we can always mount the panel on that side of it, if that makes sense, and give us the extra space we need. But we'll try this way first. But all you do is this thing comes off this housing, just kind of a forewarning, it's pretty tight. You have to kind of spin that off, so be prepared to fight it a little bit. Drill the hole in the panel, 2 wires coming off the thermostat, just get hooked up to the 2 black wires. Like I said before, it don't matter which side or which wire goes to what. As long as they're both hooked up. Secured that. Then this we can lock back in. Get our wires tucked up and get this piece reinstalled. So now what I've done is took some caulk and sealed up all the way around her housing and everything real good. Then we can come in, make sure the unit is in the off position, and what we're going to do is leak test it for our gas. So we're going to turn all of our gas on, spray everything down. We're at a connection point there and make sure we don't have any leaks. So once you verify there's no gas leaks, you can check for water leaks. What I did is just hooked up our hose to our inlet here, ran all the faucets and everything inside, get all the air purged out, get some water flowing through the system, and then, come back to where we made all of our connections and make sure you don't see any water leaking. So now we can put power to the unit. We should come to our controller, be able to turn that on, and we're just going to leave it with the factory settings. And now we can turn on our gas supply. So go ahead, open up our hot water. And I hear our water heater kicking on now. I hear it igniting. And it's already starting to warm up. So it's getting hot pretty quick. And now, that's about as hot as it's probably set. So that didn't take any time at all. We heard that ignite. When that water heater does kick on, it gets to work pretty quick. You can hear it, and we even got a little steam coming. And we got hot water, so I think it's safe to say we're in pretty good shape. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Furrion Tankless Water Heater on our 2015 Grand Design Reflection fifth wheel.